Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to unpack the fascinating history and, honestly, the deep psychology behind the stories we tell our kids. We're going to trace this journey from ancient clay tablets all the way to beautifully illustrated modern picture books. The way we pass down morals has completely transformed over time, and it's a journey that actually reveals just as much about us adults as it does about the minds of the children we're reading to.
So think about this for a second, because it's actually a bit strange when you really stop and consider it. Why do we tell our children about terrifying dangers, hungry wolves, and talking animals right as they're closing their eyes to go to sleep? I mean, to understand this, we have to look at the beloved ritual of the bedtime story itself. It definitely feels like something humans have just done since the dawn of time, right? But the specific ritual of a parent reading to a child to soothe them to sleep, that was really only cemented in the late 19th century.
Section 1. The Bedtime Story Ritual. It seems timeless, but it actually has a very distinct origin point.
The actual term bedtime story was coined by the author Louise Chandler Moulton in her 1873 book, which was appropriately titled Bedtime Stories. You see, during the second half of the 19th century, there was this growing belief that kids needed soothing, dedicated end-of-day rituals. This specific practice didn't just change parenting, it practically built the entire modern picture book industry. And modern science brilliantly illustrates exactly why we still do it today. It's not just a trick to get a kid to fall asleep. Reading out loud actively improves human brain development and accelerates language acquisition. Plus, by putting themselves in the shoes of different characters, kids build profound empathy. And honestly, most importantly, that physical and emotional closeness creates an incredibly strong bond between the storyteller and the listener.
But, before they were these cozy, soothing routines, moral literature evolved over a massive timeline. We're talking stretching all the way back to the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, with ancient Mesopotamian and Egyptian wisdom literature. Think of things like the instructions of Shuruppak, which were basically just clay tablets telling you how to live a good life. From there, it moves into the oral traditions of ancient Greece, hits the philosophical shifts of the 18th century, rolls right into the Victorian bedtime ritual we just talked about, and goes all the way to modern artistic masterpieces in the 21st century.
Section 2. Ancient Fables and Morals. Before the invention of modern psychology, how did societies teach right from wrong?
Well, they did it through morals. A moral is simply a message conveyed or a lesson to be learned from a story. Almost every single culture has its own specific narratives. Often, early storytellers used stock characters, mischievous animals or greedy kings, to clearly depict right and wrong without getting bogged down in complex personalities. And when you think about it, by stripping away all that nuance, the lesson became incredibly sharp and absolutely impossible to misunderstand.
Take Aesop's fable of the tortoise and the hare. We all know this one. It relies on that famous explicit maxim, slow and steady wins the race. The whole point is to teach that arrogance and overconfidence can lead to failure. It doesn't matter who the tortoise is or what his backstory or motivation is, he's literally just a vehicle for the lesson. It's direct, it's crystal clear, and it's survived for thousands of years because of that.
Section 3. Beware the cautionary tale. But hey, not all lessons are gentle parables about a slow-moving turtle. Let's explore the dark, often grisly world of the cautionary tale, which societies used historically to enforce conformity and keep people safe from very real dangers.
The crucial thing here is this rigid, 3-part structure. It's a formula purely designed to actively scare listeners away from danger. Step 1, a taboo stated, like, don't go into the woods. Step 2, the taboo is broken. The protagonist wanders into the woods anyway. And finally, Step 3, the unpleasant fate. The violator meets a horrifying end, which is usually described in expansive, graphic detail.
A prime example is this infamous tale from the 1858 German anthology Struwwelpeter. The title itself, The Dreadful Story of Pauline and the Matches, pretty much gives away the grim fate waiting for this rule-breaking kid. Pauline plays with matches when her parents leave, her clothes catch fire, and she burns entirely to ashes, leaving only her shoes and 2 crying cats behind. It is completely ruthless.
What's wild is seeing how this exact cautionary framework survived into modern pop culture. The DNA of Pauline and the Matches is virtually identical to 1980s teen slasher films, where teenagers who break social taboos inevitably meet a grisly end at the hands of a villain. You even see it in those terrifying 1960s driver's education films like Red Asphalt. It contrasts so sharply with the cozy, empathetic bedtime stories we think of today.
Eventually, though, society started to realize this was all a bit much. This heavy-handed, ham-fisted approach to ethics was famously satirized by Lewis Carroll in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. He mocks the ridiculous nature of these stories by pointing out that Alice had read several histories of children being burnt or eaten by wild beasts simply because they wouldn't remember simple rules.
Section 4. Shaping the Modern Mind. Moving into the 18th and 19th centuries, the way we thought about children began to change entirely. Philosophers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau shifted the cultural paradigm to view children not as miniature, defective adults, but as a very specific audience with their own unique developmental needs.
And this shift was later backed up by science. Modern developmental psychology reveals a super interesting fact. It's actually not until around 9 to 10 years of age that children finally develop the abstract thinking required to fully understand complex moral lessons. Before that age, they might just be terrified of the wolf without actually grasping the metaphor about talking to strangers.
This psychological realization led to much more nuanced moral tales and conduct books. Instead of characters instantly burning to a crisp for a minor infraction, authors like Maria Edgeworth introduced complex situations where the moral path wasn't immediately obvious. Through stories like The Purple Jar, children learned values like thrift, charity, and hard work by watching a protagonist actually gain maturity over time rather than just being terrified into submission.
Section 5. A wordless masterpiece. Finally, let's look at how modern adaptations handle these ancient lessons today, specifically focusing on Jerry Pinkney's 2009 book, The Lion and the Mouse.
Jerry Pinkney balanced retelling this classic Aesop fable with expressing the African-American experience by setting it against the breathtaking backdrop of the Serengeti. His stunning watercolor and pencil artwork actually earned him the Caldecott Medal, making him the first African-American to win the prestigious award for his illustrations in this book. It's a massive achievement.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between the old and the new ways of storytelling. A traditional fable is incredibly text-heavy. It relies on explicit maxims to make absolutely sure you get the point. But Pinkney's version? It's nearly completely wordless. Instead of vocal bargaining between the animals, Pinkney relies entirely on nature's sounds, onomatopoeia, and striking visual close-ups of the animals' expressions. He truly shows the lesson rather than telling it.
By doing this, Pinkney proves a fable can be action-packed, not just some dry moral lecture. We clearly see that the powerful can indeed crush the weak, but we also see that meekness and might are entirely a matter of perspective. It beautifully reminds us that even the most majestic, powerful lion in the Serengeti still has to rely on the collaboration of the small and curious mouse.
So we've seen how these tales evolve from rigid, frightening warnings carved into clay tablets to artistic, empathetic experiences that we share at the edge of a bed. But regardless of the format, one thing remains absolutely true. Stories remain our single most powerful tool for shaping human behavior, building empathy, and bonding us together.
All of this leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to ponder. As technology changes, and as we continue to adapt ancient wisdom for modern minds, how will the complex lessons of today be translated into the bedtime stories of the future? What new stories will we tell to shape the morals of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.